Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 12th, 2026 Budget Committee meeting for North Clackamas for developing our 2026-27 budget. Just as a reminder, this is our first official meeting of the Budget Committee after the 3 informational meetings. In tonight's meeting, the committee will be electing officers. We will also be presenting or reading the budget message and presenting our proposed budget to the committee. The next meeting is the one where the budget committee will have the opportunity to vote on approving the budget, after which it will go to the board for adoption. With that, we're going to the flag salute. Oh, Director Olson.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We acknowledge the land on which we sit and which we call the North Clackamas School District rests on the traditional and indigenous lands and village sites of the native peoples of the Kalapuya, Chinook, Molalla, and the Clackamas.
We take this opportunity to offer gratitude for the ability to learn
and work and be a community on this land.
And we offer thanks to the original caretakers of this region.
We recognize the historic policies of colonization, genocide, relocation, and assimilation that affected the indigenous and native families, both past and present, and that will affect those in the future.
And honor the resilience and revitalization of our indigenous and native communities.
We pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, who have been the stewards of this land throughout the generations.
Thank you. Our first item of business tonight is to review the notes from our April 30, 2026 Budget Committee informational meeting. Take a moment and if there is any discussion on that. Hearing none, I will move along. Oh, wait. One other thing to mention before we move to the election of officers is in the packet that the members of the Budget Committee have, there is one handout that responds to some of the questions that originated in our last meeting. And with that, we can move to the election of officers. We now need to determine who will chair the Budget Committee for this year. Please raise your hand if you'd like to make a nomination. Are there any nominations? Pardon?
You can nominate yourself.
I don't see why not. Okay. Are there any other nominations that anyone would like to make? No. Nominations do not need to be seconded, and if there are no other nominations, we can move to the vote. We have a nomination to elect Eric Roderick as chair for this year's Budget Committee. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, congratulations. Oh, congratulations, Eric. You have been elected chair. So we can take a moment. Okay. And with the election of the chair, we will be taking a 5-minute break. With the election of the chair, I will turn the meeting over to the chair.
Okay. We now need to determine who will vice chair the Budget Committee for this year. Please raise your hand if you would like to make a nomination.
I'll nominate Angelina Hill.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay. We have a nomination to elect Angeline Hill as vice chair for this year's Budget Committee. All those in favor, say aye. All of those opposed? Okay. Angeline Hill has been elected vice chair. Okay. Matt McCarr will review the budget guiding principles and the district equity policy.
Thank you. Included in everyone's packet are printouts of our district budget guiding principles and our district equity policy. I can say from experience, having been involved in the process for a number of years now, that the guiding principles that we talk about here and that are presented here are real and a real part of the process. Making the decisions that are involved in preparing the budget, these are a real guiding star for that process.
Okay, Superintendent Shay James will now present the budget message.
Thank you. Good evening. I just want to start off by saying thank you to each and every one of you for serving on the Budget Committee. I think that folks think sometimes you just show up, and it's much more than that. You're reading a lot of information outside of these meetings and digging into numbers, which is not easy, and besides the late nights. So thank you. It is volunteer, and we appreciate each one of your involvement. You make us better. The hard questions make us better. So just wanted to start off by saying thank you to all of you. Each year, the superintendent's budget message is read into the record. This year's budget message can be found directly behind the organizational section if you want to follow along. It gets long. The budget message is an executive summary and an overview of our projected budget and outlook. The budget, as Matt shared, is guided by the North Clackamas Budget Guiding Principles in addition to our district's strategic plan. These guiding principles and strategic plan can be found starting on page 8 of the budget notebook in case you want to review that if you have not already. And so with that information, I will read the budget message into the record. Some of you have done this quite a bit and you know that it can be long, so sit back and get comfortable. This will take a minute, but we'll get through it, so thank you in advance for your patience. Dear North Clackamas community, I would like to begin with a message of pride. Over the past half dozen years, we have had to navigate genuinely difficult times, many of which we would never have imagined. Despite all of the struggles we have faced, I am so very proud of how we have faced them together as a community. Through our actions, we have demonstrated a sincere commitment to our core values, equity, relationships, integrity, empowerment, and care. We continue to navigate times of uncertainty. Policy changes at the federal level continue to raise concerns about the stability of previously stable federal support. The uncertainty has had a cascading effect on state-level education funding. This was felt in the current biennium when needed changes in areas like high-cost disability and increasing the special education cap were left unfunded. It is felt when we must account for a rising cost against state and federal grants that remain largely flat. It will almost certainly continue into the next biennium, where all projections for the state school fund fall well short of the funding level called for in the quality education model. To counter this uncertainty, we have emphasized a model of financial stability. We have done this with the knowledge that financial stability is necessary for educational stability, and that protecting educational stability is done in recognition of our responsibility for the entirety of a student's education from kindergarten to graduation and beyond for some. As we witness with concern the substantial cuts our neighbors have had to make, we should not lose sight of the fact that NCSD is not immune to the pressures these districts face. We face many of the same forces: flat state funding, federal shifts, rising costs, enrollment decline. The difference is that we have a financial runway to make decisions deliberately and responsibly rather than having to make emergency ones. Our staff has not lost paid work days in recent years. Our staff have not lost school days due to finances in recent years. This shows the value of our commitment to financial stability in action and why we must stay the course. As we look ahead to next year, we continue to prioritize sustainability as we navigate significant concerns on both sides of the ledger, including, but not limited to, declining student enrollment and continued unprecedented increases in PERS expenses. In that context, I am pleased to present to our community a budget for the 26-27 school year that preserves the progress we have made while preparing ourselves for a future where we continue North Clackamas's mission of inspiring graduates who are empowered to act with courage in life and to strengthen local and global communities. Investing in the whole student. Our budget reflects a commitment to the whole student: academic, behavioral, social-emotional, and college and career ready. We do this, in part, by preparing each student through engagement, effective instruction, empowerment, and skill development in order to help them to achieve their full potential. We're actively working to provide the necessary supports at all levels through targeted and intentional actions such as instructional excellence, strengthening and improving practices leading to meaningful academic and experiential learning, responsive teaching, ensuring varied and responsive modes of teaching that meet individual learning needs, actionable feedback, provide frequent feedback that fosters student growth and proficiency, well-rounded learning, opportunities through academic arts and extracurricular activity, mental health and well-being, proactively support the emotional and mental health of every student, post-secondary pathways, district-wide systems to ensure all students graduate with a plan for success, innovative environments, safe and flexible learning spaces that encourage collaboration, and high-quality teaching materials. Researched aligned curricula are a fundamental driver of K-12 alignment and increased student learning outcomes. These practices have yielded positive results as demonstrated by literacy. We've seen increased proficiency in reading skills with a notable number of students moving to at or above grade level in reading, and with 5.5% growth in ELA for grades 3 to 5 in particular. In math, we've seen positive outcomes in math with increased percentages of students meeting benchmarks in elementary and middle school, with 7.7% growth in math at the middle school level. At the high school level, 50% of seniors are taking 4-year math courses, which is up from 20%. Title I success. We are seeing several Title I schools outperforming non-Title I schools in literacy. Ninth grade success. Our ninth grade on-track teams are making a difference supporting students through a critical transition and putting them on a path for graduation, with 90% of our ninth graders on track for graduation. Career Technical Education, or CTE. Our CTE programs are strong, with concentrators graduating at an impressive rate of 98%. We are also continuing to grow this investment for our high-demand pathways. Our commitment to the whole student is through the whole of our students' education journey from kindergarten to graduation. To meet that commitment, we have a responsibility to provide educational stability throughout their time with us. When we prioritize financial stability, it is not as an end in itself, but to meet the responsibility we have to the whole student. The new reality about enrollment. Like many of our peers in Oregon and nationwide, the COVID pandemic represented a sudden and substantial shift in enrollment for NCSD. In 2020-21, we saw a decline of 758 students from 2019 to 20. However, unlike many of our peers, we saw modest enrollment growth over the next 4 years. That growth, however, never brought us closer than 250 students to pre-pandemic levels. Unfortunately, the time of modest growth has ended. In 2025-26, we had 118 students below our projected enrollment. Our forecast for the 26-27 anticipates another decline of 126 students, and our 10-year enrollment outlook is down appreciably as well. Because 75% of our general fund revenue comes in the form of state school funding, which is allocated based on enrollment, we are obligated to align our staffing model and financial planning with the number of students we are actually serving. In the long term, there is nothing that can lessen the impact of declining enrollment, so we must start preparing for it now. Preparing for PERS. The most significant individual budgetary pressure we are experiencing this biennium and the next is the unprecedented increases in Oregon's public employee retirement system, PERS expenses. In our case, we anticipate increases of up to $11.3 million annually in the current 2025-27 biennium, and up to an additional $10.7 million annually in the following biennium. The increases coming are not a surprise. However, the substantial increase was not anticipated. With the knowledge that increases were inevitable, we have built financial reserves over time so that when the moment arrived, we would be able to avoid the significant staff and service cuts we see among many of our peers. In that, we have been successful thus far. To maintain our current levels, we are having to strategically spend down the reserves we have built. Should we arrive at the next biennium having spent down our reserves to the minimum, absorbing a 10.7 million increase could translate to a cut of roughly 85 FTE for PERS alone before accounting for anything else. While the reserves we have built may mitigate the impact of PERS increases in the short term, they are not sustainable over time. 2025-26 year in review. Financially, we are projected to the end of the year with a general fund ending balance of $72.3 million, or 19.4% of total resources. This year, we continue to invest in our school system while navigating changing teaching and learning conditions, unanticipated facility needs, and rising costs across the board. For example, salary and benefit expenses have increased 12% from 2024-25 to 2025-26, which is more than double the average increase from the previous few years. By themselves, employee health insurance and PERS have accounted for over 20% of spending in the general fund so far this year. Costs for substitutes, licensed and classified, have risen from $3 million in 22-23 to $7.1 million in 24-25 and will finish higher still this year. Additional tariff costs were responsible for a sudden rise in the cost of Chromebooks, which has required us to change course in our plans for how they are acquired, maintained, and used. As a result of rising costs, we will now only be able to renovate one playground every summer instead of two as previously planned. Water damage to Sunnyside Elementary Gym rendered the gym unusable and will require repairs that will likely reach over $1 million. Our district also saw $16.5 million invested through the Student Investment Account, SIA, during the 2025-26 school year. Those investments funded counselors, social workers, health and wellness specialists, special education teachers, nursing services, community outreach facilitators, additional contracted mental health services, staff professional development, class size reduction, early literacy materials, and support for elementary teachers at Title I schools. 2026-27 budget outlook. The budget for 2026-27 is based on $11.36 billion in state K-12 funding and also incorporates the following assumptions: salary and step increases for all employee groups, a reduction of 24.8 FTE. These reductions are distributed across all employee groups, roughly 1 to 1.4% per group, including administrators. Many are being addressed through retirements, resignations, and reorganization. This budget's classroom staffing allocations will remain the same average student to teacher ratio as this year. Elementary summer school has previously been supported by federal Title I funding. This had to be moved to general fund due to inadequate Title I funding. Flat Student Investment Account, SIA, funding has required moving critical student and family support activities like the Parent Square Communication System and the Youth Truth Feedback Survey from SIA to the general fund. Continued investments of $750,000 for safety-related classroom enhancements for staff and students. Investment in critical maintenance needs, including roof repairs and improvements to heating ventilation systems across multiple school sites to support safer, more conducive learning environments. Fund balances, revenue, and expenditures. The 2026-27 general fund ending balance is budgeted at $53.2 million, or 14.4% of total general fund resources. A projected $254.5 million in the total state school fund support. This represents NCSD's share of the total statewide K-12 state school fund of $11.36 billion. The 2026-27 projected local option levy revenue is $26.1 million. Total 26-27 general fund resources are projected at $296.6 million. This comprises $290.7 million in local and state revenue, of which $26.1 million is local option revenue, $72.3 million from beginning fund balance. Total 25-26 general fund expenditures are projected at $316.2 million, excluding fund balance. In addition to the general fund budget, we are preparing budgets for the Student Investment Account, SIA, at approximately $17.1 million and High School Success at $3.9 million. Local option levy. North Clackamas remains grateful for the support shown by our community in renewing the local option levy in November of 2023. The 5-year renewal of the levy passed with 73% support and received a majority of support in every voting precinct in the district. While we are humbled by this level of support, we are also mindful of the level of trust our community has shown in CSD. Since its original approval by voters in 2018, the levy has served as a fundamental support in pursuing our ongoing mission, supporting approximately 175 teaching positions, maintaining class sizes, and preserving programs. In the 2026-27 school year, the levy continues to support roughly 1 in 5 teaching positions in the district. Supporting the facilities that support our students. In 2016, our community approved a capital construction bond measure, which supported a successful construction bond that was transformational for our district. This bond supported new construction and the renovation of existing facilities. Every school benefited from this program. In the process, NCSD met all of our commitments on time and under budget. Now, 10 years later, we must consider how to build upon the success of our last program by supporting our facilities into the future. Over the past year, we have been actively working to develop the district's next capital construction bond package. I want to take a moment to publicly recognize the staff, parents, board members, community members, and most especially the students who contributed their time and energy to the Superintendent's Bond Advisory Committee. Our team is also actively engaging the broader community to gather feedback on the key components of the bond and sharing the story of this outstanding school district through the lens of Proud to be NCSD. As the bond package takes shape, we anticipate an even greater number of community conversations and community communications in the months ahead as we prepare to place a new bond on the November 2026 ballot. And finally, facing our future together. I want to close with something that I hope reaches everyone in the spirit that it is intended. We continue to navigate difficult times. The pressures we are all experiencing, our staff, our families, our students, and our community are all too real. Uncertainty is around us every day. And when times are uncertain, it's easy for us to lose trust in one another. That impulse is human. But our community has something that many do not. We have talented, dedicated people at every level of this organization who show up every day for kids. We have a board that takes its stewardship seriously. We have all built something special together. Solving the difficult times that lie ahead of us will require all of us. We must be open, we must be honest and clear-eyed about the challenges the future presents. We must also have the humility to recognize that individually, we cannot hope to solve all of those challenges, but by working together, we can. We must be committed to each other because we will not succeed by working against one another, but instead by trusting that all of us, board members, administration, staff, that we are all trying to do right by the same kids. I am grateful for this team, all members of our team, our licensed staff, our classified staff, and our administrative staff. I am grateful for this board, our students and families, and our community. I am confident that if we face what's ahead of us with honesty, humility, and a commitment to one another, we will come through it in a way that continues to make our community proud to be NCSD. Respectfully submitted, Shay James. I couldn't be prouder to be in this district, so thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to clap after that, but. Community comments are an opportunity for our community to share their ideas and opinions with the Budget Committee. Input is welcome and valued. It is our duty to keep it safe and respectful for everyone, students, staff, and our community. This is not a time for discussion or debate. Any individual desiring to speak will have indicated their desire prior to the meeting. I now open the floor for public comment.
Chair, if we have not reached that part of
Okay,
the meeting,
I jumped ahead, sorry.
so, sorry.
So it's your time now. So Matt McCarr will now give a budget presentation.
Thank you. Well, I'm very happy to wait for my part of the presentation, but before I get started, I also wanted to express my my thanks and appreciation for Dr. James, and my sincere appreciation for reading the whole message, and but most importantly for the leadership that she provides. All right, the budget presentation. So going through this, we'll be going in a little more detail on some of the specifics in the proposed document that you have received. I will say that some of this is duplicating what we've already heard today and in previous meetings, but where there is repetition, it is because those are things that bear repeating. So the first part of this presentation is just a summary of how the budget document is organized. The introductory section, which actually, I'm sorry, has actually been, is now named the organizational section. The financial section, which contains financial summaries for all of our different individual funds, and then the informational section towards the end of the book. I should also mention that if anyone has any questions at any time during the presentation, please do not hesitate to ask. So I wanted to here begin with kind of restating the financial environment that we find ourselves in that helped shape the decisions that were made in this budget. And then also as are the conditions and environment that we have to consider our long-term budget in. The first of which is, again, enrollment. We were 118 students below our projection for the current year, and for the upcoming year, we're expecting another decline of 126 more. Our state school fund is based primarily on enrollment, and any changes to enrollment have a huge impact on that, and there is no substitute, there is no offsetting that. One thing that was the case earlier in the year, and I'll mention this as context, initially when we saw the enrollment decline, it was the rate of our decline was somewhat less than the state as a whole. It gets very complicated as far as how the funding formula works, but under a situation like that where we are down, but everyone else is down more, then that kind of softens the blow that it has. It doesn't make up the gap, but it kind of helps make the decline not as steep as it would be otherwise. Very recently, last week, there was an update to the state school fund allocations that came out, and looking at that, and looking at the numbers, the ADMW numbers that were included in that, our rate of decline actually very modestly started to exceed the state average as a whole. And as a result, our most recent state school fund allocation for the current year, 25-26, is actually about $900,000 below what we were initially budgeted. So this is something that is real, it is active, it is something that we're looking at very closely. Also mentioned are benefit costs. Based on the advisory rates, we have an anticipated increase in PERS alone of $10.7 million for the upcoming biennium. And those are annual numbers. And then with health insurance, that is expected to grow by an average of 8 to 10% annually. As was mentioned earlier, this year to date, those two things alone, PERS and employee health insurance, have constituted 20% of what we have spent out of the general fund. And then also the uncertainties that exist. The uncertainty about the stability or the certainty of federal funding remains. And the impact there is not felt only in the direct funding that we get from the federal government, but it also has a secondary impact that is just as large on us from the state funding that we get, because for the state, almost everything that they do has some kind of federal component, and if the federal funding that they get is at all under any kind of uncertainty, that affects what they are able to do with the rest of their budget, and education being a huge part of that, it is most acutely felt there. So with that context, the budget that we have prepared, here are some high-level notes for that. Our general fund operating expenses show an increase of $7.8 million in 2026-27 from the current year. And any point from now on, any numbers that are referenced are budget to budget numbers, just for context. Of that, 8.4 million is in additional personnel costs. 5.7 million of that is in salaries. 2.7 million is in benefits. Our non-personnel costs are actually budgeted to be down next year by about 861,000. 725,000 of that is in purchase services. 133,000 is in supplies and materials, and capital in the general fund, not all capital, but in the general fund is down by $20,000. We also have increased the transfer that we have budgeted from the general fund to support nutrition services. That has been increased. And finally, in context, our personnel costs, looking at what our general fund expenses budgeted for 26-27, represent 81% of what we're budgeting in the general fund. Oh, Jennifer.
Just quick question, because it starts with the increase in general fund operating expenses is 7.8 million, but the numbers there add up to considerably more than 7.8. Does that mean that some of that came out of the contingency, or am I reading that wrong?
There is the non-personnel costs are actually down, so that's an offset.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you.
So, moving along to look at the budget as it is represented by object. The budget is prepared in two primary ways. There are a number of different budget codes that go into it, but function and object are the two primary ways to look at it. In terms of by object, what we are spending our money on, the increase from in salaries for the upcoming year is 5.7 million. That includes salary increases and steps for all of our employee groups. It also does include the reduction of 24.8 FTE from the current year. Our associated payroll costs or benefits are up about 2.8 million. This is primarily from increases in health insurance, our PERS bond expenses, Social Security. However, there is an adjustment. It also includes an adjustment to our PERS rates, which have resulted in a budgeted decline of 1.2 million, which I will explain. Seeing a budgeted decline in PERS may seem incongruous with what we've discussed before. The reason for that is that it is a budget-to-budget change. At the time that we prepared our budget last year, Senate Bill 849 had not yet passed. So the budgeted amount last year included the higher rate. Senate Bill 849 reduced our rates by 1.68%. So now that those updated rates are included in this budget, that is why we are seeing the year-over-year budgeted decline. However, I will say that when you look comparing the previous biennium to the current biennium, that averaging those increases out, the real cost is still anticipated to be about an increase of about 11.3 million. As I mentioned, purchase services are down by 725,000. A lot of this is from the removal of one-time non-capital facility projects that we had included in the budget previously. This has partially been offset by a number of other things, the largest of which is an increase in our charter school payments of $600,000. Supplies and materials are also down by 133,000. There is an increase in non-consumable supplies, but that is offset more substantially in other areas by reductions in computer hardware and consumable supplies. We have made a change to capital outlay from the general fund, a reduction there of about $20,000. Other objects reflects an increase of $15,000 due to routine increases in things like dues, fees, and licenses. I mentioned the increase in the transfer that we have budgeted for nutrition services from $750,000 to $1 million. That transfer has been budgeted at that amount going back several years from before my time, and it's been kept at that level. The purpose of it is, depending on where nutrition services comes in, there has been the need at times to supplement that with funding from the general fund. With that transfer not having been updated in several years, with potential for rising costs and also the potential for, as we mentioned before, uncertainty about federal support, it was prudent to increase that transfer, the budgeted transfer out. Ultimately, in the course of the year, whether that is made or not will depend on the financial reality of our nutrition services program. And finally, our contingency is up by about $1.9 million budget to budget. And that is really just a result of, it's kind of the remainder from all the other changes. By function, so looking through here, what we will see is that in almost all cases, and there's a second page to this, that almost all of the changes looking at the function level are driven by a couple main things. Either increases in employee payroll costs, the salaries and benefits that we mentioned earlier, shifts in FTE from one function to another, also the reductions that were mentioned. So that is where we're really seeing that's driving a lot of the variances here. And there's an explanation notes provided for any of the variances that are over $100,000. And as you can see here on this page, other than 1280 alternative education, where the increase is $600,000 to reflect an increased in charter school payments, everything else here is primarily, so the majority of these changes are driven by those couple factors that I mentioned. Here, moving along here, same thing. The only other, all of the large variances here, positive or negative, are driven by those things, either changes in employee payroll costs or FTE shifts. The couple exceptions here are the removal of the one-time non-capital facility projects that I mentioned, and then also that increased transfer for nutrition services, and finally the change in contingency. Any questions to this point?
I have a question about the Office of the Principal Services and just wondering about the FTE shifts and where they're shifting, like where those FTE shifts are coming from. Because if you look at the percentage increase from 22-23 school year to this year, when licensed and salaried staff in elementary, middle, and high school, it's significantly less of a percentage increase. And so just wondering, are we seeing a need for additional principal services, or like what is the increase?
No, it's one of the, I would say the limitations of presenting it at this level is that for licensed and classified staff, I'll go back here, those are distributed amongst a number of these different functions. So you won't see those in the same way that the Office of Principal is, because all of those are located in that one place, whereas with licensed and classified staff, they're more evenly distributed through the different functions. Does that kind of help answer the?
Yes, I was just wondering if we're seeing an increase in FTE in the Office of the Principal. And I wasn't referencing this, I was referencing this, like the percentage from 22/23 to now, and just some of those categories. I'm wondering if there's an increase in.
No, we're actually down in administrators from 25, from the current year to next year.
Okay, thank you.
So moving along to other funds, here our 200 fund, our special revenue fund, what we see here is that the funding is largely flat in a lot of different areas. These are the total budget and the change from the current year in the different areas. And you'll see in many of the areas, the funding is flat from one year to the next. It's not the exact same amount, but when you look at when you round them, it comes out the same. The context here, though, is that the funding may be flat, but a lot of these are, a lot of the expenses in these areas are staff costs. And when those costs rise, if you're flat, you're not able to do as much. So that is an important piece of context there. Our other funds, our debt service fund reflects our current debt schedule. And then I'll also mention our capital projects fund is relatively flat year to year. Those two are areas that we're kind of pending the outcome of the bond vote. If the bond passes, then we will have an opportunity, we will need to go back and make changes to those, but we didn't want to budget for the upcoming year with the assumption that the bond would pass. That is presumptuous. The community service fund, there we're seeing the increases resulting from the expected payroll increases. The internal service fund, There are no real significant changes from the current year. And our trust and agency fund, the same thing. We're seeing expected payroll increases. And with that, I open the floor for any questions.
I have a question if no one else does. So looking at the wonderful presentation that we had last time about the literacy and the increase in there, I'm seeing the early literacy grant and then also the comprehensive literacy state development for staff related to those was just excellent. I'm wondering if there's anywhere in the expenditures where we would see consumables or we were talking about supplemental education that's being used in those programs, wondering if there's an increase that's related to that in the budget.
I would want to, for some of the more specific questions, the more technical, detailed questions, I'd want to have an opportunity to,
Please.
and then provide a follow-up before our next meeting.
That would be great. I'm just wondering, this is so vast and takes so much time to put together. Thank you. I just want to be pointed to like where that would be if it's there or if we're looking at staff specifically.
And thank you. That is a good reminder. I've been remiss in not mentioning and thanking Donna Burke and our team of accounting who have done the work in putting this together. As you mentioned, it is a substantial effort, and I am grateful for the work that they've done.
Matt,
Okay.
sorry.
No.
Go ahead, Monica, after you.
Okay, I'm gonna be a little annoying because I wrote page numbers and they're
No,
different.
that-
Okay, so I'm looking at the general fund, page 5, and under 1,111, and then the classified, it looks like the classified budget is reduced by about 500,000 for elementary school. Did we reallocate those classified employees, or did we cut a significant number of FTE?
The what you see across in a number of different areas, and kind of going back to the part about looking at the different functions, in a number of cases, it is shifts of FTE between different functions.
Okay, so I'm just gonna follow up that with object code 1250. It looks like, so this is disabilities less restrictive. What did we cut from license versus what did we add to the classified? It looks like we cut 1.5 million from license category and added 540,000 of classified. So is that, am I reading that correctly? That maybe we shifted those classified positions down to that?
With
Less
the technical questions, like the very specific questions like that, I'd want to have an opportunity to do a little more research to be able to provide a more comprehensive answer.
Okay, and then I'm gonna throw another one at you. I'm sorry, you guys. 20, it looks like I'm looking at page, I don't know, 13, at 2140. It's other student treatment services. Can you just touch on what that is and who falls under psychological services?
I believe those would be largely like school psychologists. I could get a little more detail on the specific position titles that are going to fall under there.
Okay. And then my last is just a comment. The FTE column is super helpful, but it'd also be helpful to if we are comparing FTE from last year to this year. I don't even know if we can get that to fit on this page, but.
Having put together many of these documents, the answer is usually no, unfortunately.
Matt, before I have a couple questions, but first I just want to thank you and your team. And this is my second year on this committee, really impressed with the district and its leadership and your principals. I'm actually really happy to see the increase in nutrition services budget and expenses, is it fair to conclude that the plan is to continue nutrition services to students as is happening this fiscal year?
Yes,
Okay.
although, again, kind of getting back to to some of the uncertainty that exists at the federal level, that could have an impact. We don't know of any specific changes from federal sources currently, but we need to be prepared for those.
I hear you loud and clear on that for sure. Can you kind of guide me through the increase in substitute costs? Because it looks like there's been a significant increase. They more than doubled in 2 years. So what's driving that increase in substitute costs?
There are a number of factors that are driving that. One of which is that there are simply more, there's a greater need. There are more employee time off or absences that need to be filled. There has been a notable increase after the implementation of paid leave Oregon, which is not to take a position on the value or necessity. It just recognizes that fact. So there are more absences that need to be filled. The other thing that has happened is that a couple years ago we went with a third-party service to be able to fill those vacancies. And so we have also seen a really substantial increase in the fill rate for those. So that has increased substantially. I'm trying to recall the exact percentage. I believe it was about 75% for all. At the lower number, it was at about 75% for licensed and classified. I'm trying to remember the licensed and classified, but now for licensed alone, I think that is about 98, 99%. So with the third-party service, we've been filling a lot more of the absences and the need for subs. So that has been a huge win for our schools and for our students, but it does come at that additional cost.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad that they're taking the time that they deserve and need. Can you guide me through, with the 24.8 fewer FTE, how student to teacher ratios are being maintained?
So that comes in a couple different ways. What we have been able to do is, for the most part, been able to make those reductions through normal attrition and retirement and things like that. So with that, with the FTE reductions and the size of the student population, we are able to maintain that.
Okay. And then finally, so at current drawdown rates, when does the fund balance reach that kind of 5% minimum, and what triggers a course correction before that happens?
Well, it's actually our minimum is 10%.
Oh, okay.
Which is a change that has been made since the last year. That is an excellent question, and there's no simple answer to that. We are, over the next couple years, we are projecting that our reserves will have to be drawn down in order to maintain a level of service. However, at the same time, we're looking at those enrollment decreases, so we are going to have to continue to respond to those and scale our operations to meet the number of students that we're actually serving. I would not want to overly speculate on when we would arrive at that point, because there are there's still, it's difficult to predict with certainty what will happen 6 months from now, a year from now, let alone once you get out a number of years. But that is something that we are in the position right now where we are spending more than we're bringing in. That is not sustainable over time, and that's something that we need to be prepared for. We haven't reached that point yet, but we need to continue to be cautious and prioritize financial sustainability.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't have a question, but I guess more of a comment to the fellow committee. I think I would encourage the committee to take a deep dive into the line items. This is something I kind of do for a living, is looking at financials and line items. This is a pretty complex thing to look at. So I would just suggest that we all kind of take some time. I got my hard copy earlier, and the first thing I said is I'm going to need some more time to look at this and really digest it, because it will take some time. So I would just suggest that to the committee, and then see if there's opportunity to send you questions. And if you could, I don't want to pepper you with a whole bunch of different questions, but maybe if we can send it to you in one format to where you can just answer those.
Yes, I'm always open to answering questions. However, I will say that we being mindful about the time that may be needed to prepare a response and the having that response ready in time for our upcoming meeting.
Can I ask another question about some of these things that are in the more general buckets, specifically thinking about library and media? I saw that library books used to be doled out into separate budgets and now is in one, which I think makes a lot of sense. But I would love to understand, what's the process of accessing those funds? So is there a process by which someone submits for requests? Is there a review process in terms of how the funding is determined to be used?
Okay, I would want to,
Yes.
that would be a follow-up question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Not just a procedural question. Sounds like you might be getting some questions from board members, budget board members. Do you want them all to go to you or through the chair, or how would you like that?
Yeah, I think I will say this is something that we have not had, that has not come up previously, is questions outside of this meeting. So I would ask that we have, that any questions come to us from one point, whether it's the chair, and that we would have a sufficient amount of time to be able to answer those at least a week or so.
Matt, I'm sorry. They can actually come to me through me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, I have more of a question. I haven't been keeping track, but I'm just wondering, I know there's negotiations happening. How does that factor into the proposed budget? Does it factor, I guess, into the proposed?
Well, the exact financial impact of that is yet to be known. We have tried to prepare a budget that would that is kind of prepared for that possible outcome. But again, there
We're
are things
still in
that
negotiations.
that we do not know.
Gotcha.
Sorry, one last question. What constitutes, and this is probably for Petra, sorry, what constitutes a CTE concentrator?
That will be a follow-up question. All right, well, if there are no other questions, I believe my portion of the evening is concluded. I will turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, now we're in the public comment portion. Community comments are an opportunity for our community to share their ideas and opinions with the Budget Committee. Input is welcome and valued. It is our duty to keep it safe and respectful for everyone, students, staff, and our community. This is not a time for discussion or debate. Any individual desiring to speak will have indicated their desire prior to the meeting. I now open the floor for public comment. We have not received any requests. Public comments are now closed. I'm sorry, I went too far. My first day. So we are now open for public comment. None? Okay. All right. And now we are the committee questions and comment section. Are there any additional comments or questions from the committee?
I have one question on the APIB. It's more just a curiosity, but there's an @ERR with no one in that category. I was just curious. That's a new acronym for me. I know SPED and ELL real well, but I don't know ERR. Maybe it's an error.
We could follow up on that.
Donna, and this is maybe just a point of a question. Is there any way that we can get the answers, like all the committee members can get the answers to everyone's questions? Because I'm curious about all of these too.
I can answer that. With any of the questions that come out of the committee, those are what is included in the packet, either sent ahead of time or as we did today, printed up and included in the packet in the next meeting
Can I ask, Matt,
for all members.
for the question I had specifically about the literacy grant, though, I would really appreciate having that at least an hour or two in advance, just so that since I want to be able to look at it, it'd be helpful to see that. Just moments before would be helpful.
We, with any, either the preparing the budget, the document, or the questions, we try and have those out as soon as, at the earliest, we were able to. After the first budget committee meeting, we were able to send out the responses that came out to the questions that came out of the initial meeting. We were able to send those out with the packet ahead of time. That's the hope, but we are not always able to do that.
And Matt, if you could kind of provide some guidance to the committee on the form of question that you would like to see. For example, when we're pointing out a certain line item, I think you mentioned $100,000 would be a substantial amount. I'm pretty sure you don't want to field a whole bunch of questions where, we're asking about $5,000 here, $20,000 there. What's a good guideline to kind of stay within when it comes to the amounts we're asking about?
Well, I would not want to say anything that would limit or discourage questions. However, I can say that the budget, as you've seen in looking at it, is really comprised of a very substantial amount of information. And so there may not be straightforward answers to things that seem like straightforward questions. So the higher level the question, probably the more we will be able to answer that directly.
Okay. Well, we have that recess until May 28th, 2026 budget meeting. It is now it is now 7:44 p.m. As there are no further business, the North Clackamas Budget Committee meeting is recessed until 6:30 p.m. on May 28th, 2026. Have a good evening.